Here we go. Duobus his artibus, or plural ablatives, ablative absolute. So by these two arts or skills or practices, as we see, or dacia, which is boldness, in bello, in war, of that neuter word. So this boldness or dacia is one of these two, and or by pax evenerat. So when pax is the nominative, evenerat, when it turned out, that's the outcome from that verb. So when there was peace, equitate. This is also in the ablative. So this means fairness. So when it turned out there was peace, or when peace happened, there was fairness or justice, and boldness in war contrast to that, and it was these two skills. Sei qui rem qui publicam curabat. This is how they took care of, say, themselves and the republic. And you can tell that from the qui and clitic. Quarum rerum, of which things, basically, ego I, maxima documenta, haec habebo. Usually when it's dealing with a person, this means it's considered, but of which especially maxima, this documenta is evidence, haec is the demonstrative pronoun. So I consider this the greatest evidence, even though it's not referring to a person. Quod, it's either going to be because, or you might be able to say, I consider that, if you want these two to go together, that in bello, in war, sapius, comparative, so more often, or rather often, the vindicatum est in eos. In the accusative means towards this. So the vindicatum would be a punishment. Again, in war, more often the punishment would be against those, qui, who, the relative pronoun. Contra means against. The imperium, against orders, basically. Pugna variant in hostem. Again, those who would fight, who had fought against the enemy contrary to orders. So unordered, usually they use a word like in issue or something they call it. I can't remember how they spell it. Anyway, and qui, and those who, tardius, rather slowly, another comparative, are revocate. Here's the supine form. Most of them have a T or an S there. So they accessorant, they leave from this ablative, from parolio, from battle, and when they're recalled, so those who are recalled, they leave the battle rather slowly. Quam, then qui, then those who relinque assigna, which are the standards or the big flags that they have. Or pulsi loco sidere orsi erant, and that's the end of that section. Also, pulsi again, it's describing the people in plural. They were repulsed, and so orsi erant means they dared, taking the infinitive, to cede, to retreat. Loco, from this place, pulsi, when they're being repelled. So all that together goes, he has this, the greatest evidence he has here of boldness in war, fairness, but which the biggest punishment was towards those who, against the orders, went out and attacked the enemy, when recalled, revocate, they left the battle rather slowly, and he punished them more, quam, than those who had abandoned the standards or left them in the fight, or who had dared to cede ground when they were really pressed hard. In pace, so in peace, simple ablative. Vero, this is the but word. But in peace, contrasting this which was in bello. Quod, again, because, or we can say, or in peace, that they did an action. Beneficis, so this is, bene means well, and ficis means the deed, so they'd done good deeds or kindness. Magus quam, more than. Another ablative, metu, which is fear. Here's the verb, adjutabant. So they carried out their imperium. They adjutabanted their imperium. This is how they controlled things, their imperium, with beneficis, with kindness or good deeds, more than with metu, than with fear. This is in times of peace. And accept inuria, another ablative absolute. And having accepted injuries, again, we have that T form there for the we find in supines. Having received any injustice or injuries, ignoscere quam persequi malabant. So malabant here, which is they preferred, takes the infinitive, they preferred to ignoscere, which is the pardon, than to persecute or to punish someone. Said, but ubi when labore, by labour, at qui justia, and by justice, res publica crevited. So when the republic, which is our topic here, when it crevited, it means it grew by hard work, labour and justice. Reges magni bello domiti. Okay, so magni reges mean there were great kings. Domiti means they were domesticated, they were tamed, they were beaten, bello in war. And these are the successors to Alexander the Great. These are the great kings that they have domination over. Nations ferae, another nominative plural it looks like. Yep, so these are feral nations, wild, savage peoples, nations, and populi gentes. This means huge people. So I don't think it'd be huge in size. They wouldn't be like 10 foot. This just means they were a great people or a powerful people. They were subacti again, like domitai from the supine and subacti from the supine. Passive of the verb. So by force they were subactive, means they were subdued. So this is the wild savage nations, and a great amount of people were beaten by force and driven into submission. Carthago, which is Carthage. With Carthage, I'd say it's ablative. Emula, which means a rival. Imperio Romano, double genitive. Carthage was with Carthage being the rival of Imperial Rome, and absterpe interit means it was destroyed, interit. From the stock or from the root to the base of the city, it was all destroyed. Cuncta Maria terraqui patabant. So now, cuncta is the adjective with these neuter of Maria. So all the seas, plural, and the lands, terrae, were lying open. Savire fortuna. Fortuna is what we call fortune or fate. It's a deification of an abstract form. So fortune, here, copit. That's why we've got the infinitive. Fortune began to savire and miscere omnia, everything. So it began to savage and mix into confusion omnia, everything. Okay. Qui labores. Qui means they who. Labours, pericula, dangers, again that's a neuter. Dubious, so when there was dubious circumstances or things to be hesitated about. And asperus, which means harshness. Res, okay. So labores res, pericula res, etc. So these are circumstances where labour and dangers and hesitation, dubiousness and harshness. They could tolerate this facilely, which means easily, but is to these people otium, which is leisure, divitaequi, and riches. Optanda alias is that gerundive looking thing, or gerund, something we would choose. Optanda means that we would choose, alias at other times. Fuerent, these were oneri miseraqui. These were burdens and wretchedness, basically. So they could tolerate easily hard labour and dangers and difficult times, but they found leisure and riches, something you would choose for other times, to be burdens and misery. Igator, so therefore, or then or next, we might want to say, primo, and first, imperi, for power, and deinde, then and second or next, accupido crevido, pecuniae, their increased accupido desire for money. Now, the Loeb has it the other way around. It says, therefore then, first they had a desire for money and then for power. But Latin Library here has first the desire increased for power and then for of money. Ia, these things, quasi as if, materies, this is a 50 clension like res. It's an alternative spelling of materia, which is usually lumber, but it can be other things. Omnium malorum fuerent. So these things were as if this looks like the root of all evils is the best way to put this. That word for lumber and wood can mean the stock or the root of all evil. And fuere is an abbreviated form. Okay, so daily dictionary word. Materies is the alternate form. for materia. Matter, material, substance, timber. Figuratively, the source or the origin, which is all we've got, the root of all evil. Okay, namque. 4, avaritia, which is avarice and greed. Fidem in the accusative. Probitem in the accusative. Ceteris qui artis bonus subvortis. Okay, and for avarice or greed, subvorted or subverted. Fidem, which is loyalty or trust. Probitatem is uprightness or decency. And the ceteris of bonus artis and the rest of the good arts. And this artis, as we saw from up here with artibus, means arts, skill or practices. So these subvorted, these are the good practices. Pro here, so instead of these, superbiam, which is proudness, arrogance. Crudelitatem, which is cruelness. Deos neglere, to neglect the gods. Omnia venalia habere e doquid. Okay, so this taught them basically. You can say that's what it actually means, e doquid. But this more made them to have proudness, cruelty, and neglecting the gods, and to have everything for sale. Omnia venalia, instead of the fidem, probitatem, and the rest of the good arts. Ambitio, which is ambition. Literally, it means to go around the people's houses in a circuit and gather support. But ambition, multos mortalis forsos fieri subjecit. So ambition subjugated or forced many mortals to become false or fake people, I guess. Aliud clausum in pectore, so they would have one thing, aliud, so the correlatives. One thing would be clausum in the chest or the heart, sometimes it says, or in the breast. So you would have one thing shut away in your heart, but aliud, another thing, in lingua promptum habere, and you would have another thing. Promptum means ready at hand, on your tongue. So you'd have one thing what's secret in your heart, and another thing ready to produce promptly with your tongue. Emicetas inimicisque, so friends and the enemies, not ex-re, not from the circumstances or whatever, but ex commodo estimare, but thinking from convenience rather. Magisque and more voltum quam ingenium bonum habere, and to have magus voltum, more of a bearing or a look than to have bonum ingenium, than to have a good character, if you've got that. Haec, these things, primo, at first, or in the first position. Paulitum, one of our favourite adverbs, means gradually, literally little by little. Crescere, so these things, they increased, they grew little by little. Interdum, and sometimes, or from time to time, vindicare, they were punished, basically. Post, after, ubi contagio, when this contagion, of greed, basically, quasi as if, pestilentia invasor. So when this contagion had invaded, come into them really, as if it was a pestilence, civitatus immutata, and the state became changed, mutated. Imperium, or power, or the power to give orders, from justissimo, from x takes the ablative, from the most just, that's that superlative, at qui optimo, and the optimum, from the most just, and the thing you greatly would want, however you want to put that in English, the best thing. Crudele intolerandum factum. So factum, again, it means this is what it was, this is its deed, this is what was happening. So it had changed. Remember that the civitas had it changed. Now it was crudele, so it was with cruelness and intolerandum, which is a gerund form. But yeah, it was you couldn't tolerate it, basically, is what it's saying. Sed primo again, but first, magus imbitio quam avaritia animos hominum exercebant. So, but first, the animos, the minds, hominum of men, is exercised more with this ambition than avarice. So, still, they were pushed on by ambition more than just greed, outright avarice. Quod tamen, we'll say, could be a quad clause, which tamen, nevertheless, is a vitium, which is a fault or a vice, proprius, which is nearer to virtue, erat. So, he's making a little excuse for it. He's saying even though their minds were going more from ambition than for greed, this is a vice, but it must have sprung from virtue to have ambition originally. Nam, for gloriam in accusi, honor, glory, honor, and imperium, which is the power. Bonus and ignavus, this is our nominative. So the good and the cowardly, literally it means, but the good and the not so good, equally, sibi for themselves, ex optant. So it's saying here, for the good and the weaker or cowardly people, they ex optant, they choose this for themselves equally. Good and bad people want glory, honor, and power. Said illy, but him, vera via nitator, who strives by the true path. In huic, so illy is the former, which is good is written former. He strives for the true path, but huic, this is the later, the ignavus. Quia bone artes desunt. Quia means because, desunt means lacking, because he's lacking in these bona arts, these good skills, these practices. Dolus atqui fallacis contendit. He contends with dolus, which is tricks, and fallacies, which are lies, deceits. Aberitia, avarice, pecunae studium habet. So avarice has a studium, a zeal or a desire for pecunia, for money, quam, which, nemo sapiens, this is nominative in appositions, which no one who is wise, or no wise man, concupivits. It's a perfect verb, so which no wise man desires. So avarice wants money, but the wise man does not. Almost done. So ea, which is female demonstrative pronoun, which would be for avaritia. For this greed, quasi as if, venalis malus imbuta. So imbuta goes with the ea. It's the, you see we've got the T again there, which you get in past passives and in adjectives. So this avarice, as if it is imbued with venalis malus, with bad poisons, literally, in the ablative. Corpus animumque, corpus is a neuter, animum is accusative, which makes a virile body and mind effeminate. So that's what he thinks of avarice and greed. He thinks it makes a manly body and mind effeminate. Semper infinite, always infinite, because I would say unquenchable, I suppose. Insatiable, well, that would, insatiable goes with that. So avarice is infinite, you're always greedy, it's insatiable. Neither copia neque inopia munitor. So neither copiousness, which is a lot, nor inopia, which is a lack, will diminish this poisons basically inside of avarice.